Great. Well, thank you, Mark, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to this event tonight. Really excited how it's come together. It's an incredible turnout. I've got 279 folks so far on it. We're expecting some more as we continue. So that is terrific. It just shows how much interest there is in getting information out to our communities. I want to thank all of you because all of you are volunteers in your neighborhoods, in your communities. And have stepped up to take on these roles. Really appreciate all of your efforts, your willingness to engage on behalf of your neighbors. And while my office, our District 1 County Council office, is technically hosting this event tonight, it really was a collaborative effort. And I want to make sure to recognize those who are actually responsible and move quickly through my initial remarks here to get on to the experts. I've learned very quickly that I am not included in the expert portion of any festivity. First is Chairman Mark Fine, who, keep in mind, is a volunteer, just like so many of you are. He not only performs his regular duties as chair of the Commission on Common Ownership Communities, but rises above and beyond and answers so many HOA questions that our office sends to him on a near daily basis. He's just an incredible asset to our county. And I know all of you who have interacted with him feel the same way, and not just as a problem solver, but as a policy advisor as we take up issues that impact your communities and have council deliberation. Mark plays such an invaluable role to ensure that the common ownership community perspective is part of that discussion. And what I appreciate most of all is that he's a straight shooter and will step in to tackle some really difficult and often emotional issues related to our homes and our communities. And so thank you, Mark, for all of your work and your service to the community. And then, of course, I'd like to thank Eric on my team. He's our office's senior fellow. We weren't sure how this was going to work when we first agreed to have a senior fellow in our office, and it has worked incredibly well. Eric has been a trailblazer and has really been a huge asset. Mind you, he only works part-time, although many of you have interacted with him. You'd think that he was working more than full-time in addition to his work as a professor at Montgomery College and UMGC, and also very active in the community in the Pike District, White Flint area as well. And those of you who are in District 1 joining us this evening, which is many of you, I'm sure you've heard from Eric on our office's behalf and have interacted with him and have been able to benefit from his efforts to ensure that we understand what's happening on the ground in your communities, the issues that you're facing, to try to troubleshoot those challenges. I hope you'll continue to reach out to us, to Eric, and to me with any issues that you may have. And then just want to also acknowledge briefly Rose Hacking on my team, who handles housing issues, who's been terrific in handling these issues that many of you probably have interacted with as well. Linda McMillan from the Council Central staff, who has been an incredible asset to us and to the county, and we rely on so many different issues, including all issues related to housing. And then we also are joined from representatives from the county executive's office, and we do work collaboratively with DHCA and with the executive branch more broadly beyond just Mark and all of his efforts as well. Also want to thank the commissioners helping to moderate and speak this evening. Ms. Stacy Gelfound, Mr. John Smith, Dr. Linda Moore, Ms. Cheryl Walker, and Mr. Donald Perper, who'll be moderating. Understand you work to create this presentation that you'll be fielding audience questions. Our residents may not realize that they not only rely on volunteers at each HOA, such as all those in attendance today, but the fact there are even more volunteers behind each of you to support you in your work. The infrastructure and the energy that it takes behind the scenes to keep our neighborhoods running smoothly is just astounding. And as somebody who actually lives in a common ownership community, I certainly appreciate it. I know how thankless of a job it can be every time I send my own emails and suggestions and friendly recommendations to the board members in my community. I know you all are on the receiving end of so many of those, and literally it would not be possible, the type of quality of life that we have in so many communities across our county, without your willingness to step up. So there are so many volunteers here this evening who step up to help out in so many different ways, particularly at a time like this in a pandemic with all of the economic uncertainty and challenges that are facing your communities and your residents and all the challenges that we face personally. Your willingness to go above and beyond and take on these different roles and responsibilities is just a testament to the type of community that we have. So just want to thank you with deepest gratitude for that. Look forward to a really terrific program with all of the expertise tonight. Look forward to all of your questions being answered. If they're not answered, I hope you will feel free and comfortable and confident to reach out to us in my office at any time. We are here to serve you and to help you do your job better and help make it easier for you on a daily basis. So please don't hesitate to do so. And with that, I'll turn it back to the program and just thank everybody for joining. We're about to hit the 300 mark, which is just an incredible testament to all the work that went into organizing this evening's event. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Eric, by the way, in one more sign-in, you owe me a coffee. I believe that's what the bet was. Anyway, with that, it looks like we're having a little bit of a glitch with the attendee list. So I'll put into the chat shortly my email address. Anybody that needs to know the attendees that are here, I'll be more than happy to send that. We hit the 302 mark. I will go ahead and send that list to you. Just shoot me an email. Jim already has my email, so we don't have a problem there. So we'll take care of that for you. Now, as far as tonight, if you have a question for us, what we would like you to do, if you open up what's called the participant window, you will see a raise hand function. Press that raise hand function, and that will get our attention, and when we start doing the question and answer. If you'd like to get your question and answer ahead of time, go down to where it says Q&A. Click the Q&A, type in your question, and we'll start doing that first come, first serve. And we'll answer as many of them as we can as we're going through it. If we get too overwhelmed, we will get back to everybody in writing with all the questions. We're keeping track of it. We also have a couple of polls we're going to ask some questions about this evening, and there's also an exit poll. So if you could take a moment or two to fill that out on your way back, we'd greatly appreciate it. We're not asking for who you are. We just want to know a couple things about what you're looking for when we do our next webinars. Now, my co-partner in crime that's going to help me co-moderate, Don Perper. Don has been in community associations for probably, what's it been, about 28 years now, I believe, 28, 29. You hold designations from Community Associations Institute of CMCA, Certified Manager of Community Associations. You're also a PCAM, Professional Community Association Manager. You've been with me on the board now since the Montgomery County Commission on Common Ownership since 2018. And you attended George Washington University. You have a bachelor's in zoology, a bachelor of arts in applied music, and a master's in applied music. So just so everybody knows who we have out here. Our first presenter is going to be my vice chair, Stacy Gelfand. Stacy has been with community management since 1989. She started in Leisure World in one of those two high-rise. We won't mention that name. She also holds many degrees with CAI. She has her CMCA. She has her AMS and her PCAM. She also is a community manager license in Virginia. She's been on CAI's board for the Metropolitan chapter and was president of the chapter in 2006. She is the CAI faculty member. She teaches courses for CAI. She's also been on the National CAI Managers Council. She, as if she didn't have enough punishment, she was a commissioner from 2006 to 2012, stepped off of the commission and came back in 2016. And she agreed to assist me in my last year with the commission to be my vice chair. I saw that look, Councilman. Yeah, I'm on my sixth and final. So bear with me 1 second. I'll put the stuff up and I will give it to you, Stacy.
Thanks, Mark.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. So we're going to first start with what are reserves. So reserves for your community are those capital items that are there when you look around your community, whether that be sidewalks, your parking lots, a swimming pool, guest rooms, a gym, a club room, all of those types of things. So those are the things that you are looking to reserve for in any type of large projects. So things like if you have a 10-story high rise and all of the hallways need to be painted. That's something that sometimes the boards want to put that into reserves, or eventual window replacements, or things that the board sets at a certain level, and depending on the community, it may be something that's anything that's $10,000 or more. It may be as small as $5,000, it may be $25,000, but it's something that the board sets kind of a policy is what is going to be operational expenses, small projects versus what is going to be reserves. And then once you have that, that's when you want to go in and get a reserve study done. And that reserve study is going to go through and identify all of those capital items and large projects that the board has decided that between their documents and looking at their budget that they want to reserve for. And with that, this reserve study becomes something that the board uses more for budget purposes, for planning purposes. It's not a spending plan. So if the board is looking at that, or owners are looking at the reserve study and it says that the roofs are going to be replaced in 2025, it doesn't mean that they are going to be replaced in 2025. That's just the plan there. Every year it should be looked at. Every 3 to 5 years, the reserve study should be updated to get that cost of life and see what those life expectancies are. So it's just a rational basis for budget planning purposes for the board of directors. With that, that will help kind of even out the playing field, so each owner pays their fair share for the use of the property during their time of ownership. So the people that start in the community, for the first 10 years, they're paying their share of that roofing, and then moving forward, the next owners are paying for the next portion of it. So it's just a way to evenly spread that out, rather than the board coming to each owner and saying, hey, we need to replace the pool house. We'd like a check for $12,000. Thank you very much. So it's to do that and to spread those costs across the board. And so that kind of also falls into why a study is needed, is to help that planning process so there aren't any surprises, so there's not special assessments. And so as long as the board has a plan and they're putting away money every year according to that plan, there shouldn't be any major surprises. And where we see associations get into trouble is when they're not using that plan and they're not funding that properly, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the presentation. And I think it's important to note that it's the board that is the only entity that has the authority to decide on funding those reserves. So based on your legal documents and the board, it's the board that the community has entrusted to make those decisions, but they're not alone. They have, if they have professional management with their community, they have those professional managers to rely on, and then they have the reserve specialist who are coming out and performing that reserve study, excuse me, and working in conjunction with that board. And again, these are funds that are set aside separately from the operational budget, and they're placed into a separate fund to be used at a later date.
Don, I'll turn it over to you in 1 second. There are a lot of people that are asking if the video will be available. We hope to have the video posted sometime tomorrow on the CCOC website. Toward the end of the program, I will show everyone how to get to that so that they will be able to review it, as well as about a 50 slide presentation of the PowerPoint we're doing that should be available to you, I believe, Monday. It'll also be on the website. And the questions regarding the reserve study, we will answer for you in the Q&A. But I put our email address to get the list of attendees up in the chat for everyone. So if you do have a question, please feel free. And Don, I will turn it over to you, sir.
Thanks, Mark.
Mhm.
Wanted to thank Commissioner Guilfound for leading us off with tonight's presentation. Now I'd like to turn to Commissioner John Smith. A little bit about John. Commissioner Smith, since 2008, John served as a national director with the National Senior Service Employment Program that's located in Silver Spring, primarily responsible for assisting older workers. He's responsible for developing and managing all the internal fiscal and operational systems that ensure the day-to-day operation of 3 major programs with the USDA, the EPA, and the U.S. Forest Service. And John's also responsible for ensuring the timely completion and general compliance with all the federal contractors in the older worker community and other grant deliverables. In addition, John's passion says that the greatest joy in his work is to monitor and provide input on workforce development, school to work, welfare to work, and other vocational education and program policy issues. John spent nearly a decade of his past employment experience providing legislative guidance and technical assistance to local workforce areas and workforce board chairs, administrators, and other key staff on program topics, as well as provided various government agencies interpretation and general position on multiple policies and issues facing the workforce development community. And through all this, John has managed to stay married for 29 years, and he has a child, and he also has done some volunteering at the national political level for some of the national candidates in the past. So I want to again introduce John, and Commissioner John Smith is going to be talking with us about the level of reserve studies and what is actually needed to perform a reserve study. Commissioner Smith, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. I guess you can all tell that I wrote that. I didn't know how much you really wanted to know about me, but there it is. So thank you very much, all of you. If I sound a little nervous, I've never spoken before, 200, 300 people. So just bear with me a little bit. This is a new topic for me. Reserve studies are basically designed to help communities plan for the repair of common elements. These devices have 2 components. The first component is sort of a physical analysis of the major elements in your communities, as Stacy pointed out. The second component of the reserve study is an analysis of your financial situation, and it also provides a funding plan. During the physical analysis stage, a reserve provider will evaluate and provide information regarding the physical status and the conditions and the necessary repairs and replacement costs that are associated with your common elements. As Stacy, my predecessor, just explained to you, your pools, your playgrounds, your parking lots, and the like. During the financial stage, the financial analyst will help you assess the association's reserve balance and the fund status. This is primarily oftentimes referred to as a funding plan. There are 3 types of reserve studies. The first is a study that will, for all intents and purposes, be on a site visit where they will look at a number of documents. Those documents will primarily consist of your governing documents. I'm not going to explain all of those to you because I think that most of you probably understand what they are. The analysis, as I mentioned, will look at the conditions of your elements, provide the life and valuation estimates of your common elements. And at the end, you'll have a financial status statement as well as a funding plan. The second kind of reserve study is an update to the existing reserve plan that you have worked together with your special team that has been brought in to help develop the reserve, as well as your management company and the members of your board. This oftentimes may include another on-site visit. You'll want to see where your common elements have gone, in terms of their state of effectiveness in the community. That is the roof, that are the elevators. Those are the kinds of things that are oftentimes, considered for repair when you live in a common property or a common community. I don't want to get in trouble with one of my vice chairs who has specific terms that we want to make sure that we use. As I said, the update of the reserve study can be on site, and it also can continue to look at the review of your, the quality of your existing common elements. It will provide an update in the funding status statement, as well as develop a revised funding plan for the next 3 to 5 years. I don't know whether I mentioned that. More often than not, these reserve studies are planned to go over, depending upon the size of the replacement, 3 to 5 years. Sometimes they go up to a number of more years. The third level of the reserve study is yet another update that won't necessarily include a site visit, and it will, however, require the team, that is the firm that's brought in to help you manage your reserve study, develop it. You'll provide additional evaluations of the estimates for your reserve study, that is the common elements. It'll provide an update to the funding status statement, and it'll also develop yet another funding plan for the next period of time that the reserve study is going to cover. The thing that I think that's most important for board members and local communities to keep in mind is that they are, for all intents and purposes, the drivers behind the policy. What gets repaired, when it gets repaired, and how that information is communicated to the community. Local boards need to ensure that when they pick a company to help them do the reserve study, they have a basic understanding that the team is going to be with them, not only through the development of the plan, but more importantly, when communicating that to the rest of the board, as well as the entire community. With that, I think I probably reached the limits of my information on this, so I'm going to pass this on to a more qualified member of my team. Don, take it away.
All right.
Okay, John, I've got it up. I'm sorry. John, thank you. I'm stepping in for a sec. We had another commissioner that was going to be with us tonight, but unfortunately there was a family emergency. So we've asked Stacy to step up and fill in, and she's greatly, we appreciate it, agreed to do that. She is going to cover funding the reserves, and what does fully funded mean when we're talking about fully funded baseline funding, threshold funding, and what have you. Stacy?
Thanks. So you've gotten your reserve study done, and you'll see all of these charts and all of these different ways of funding the reserves. And oftentimes boards go, well, what does this all mean? So kind of wanted to go through what those different methods were. So the first one is component method. And that is just simply where they're going to list out everything that you're reserving for, and they're going to tell you what the anticipated life is and what the cost is at that time of replacement. And when you fund using that component method, that means that the money that you are putting away for that specific line item, if it says elevators, you should put away $1,500 a month on that, then the money, when you fund your reserves, that $1,500 can only be used for the elevator. And then if you have a pool and it says, you know, that's $100 a month, you can only use that $100 a month. So the deficiency, the downside with doing it on a component method is that you can't use money, you can't use the pool of money to pay for roofs. You can only use the money that's in that line item that you've been putting away on that monthly basis for the roofs. And as far as the calculation, it's just a simple, they take the cost, they divide it by the service life, and that's how much you're putting away on a monthly or yearly basis. On the accrued value, that is where you're going to accrue the fund balance for each component. So for example, you're going to take the replacement cost, divide it by the service life, and multiply it by the years in service. And then they're going to add the accrual values for all of the components. And then a percent is funded is based on that balance total calculated on the accrued value. The baseline, and that's usually the most common, that's what most associations decide to fund on. And that is where they use the cost estimates and service lives to generate projected total cost by year. So it starts off with how much the current assessments are, how much the current balance is in the reserves, and then they, they calculate the stream of those assessments based on that formula, and they come up with what you are going to be funding on a yearly basis. And then during that study period, which is usually typically 20 to 30 years. There's also the second most common one is the threshold funding. And so the threshold funding is where they're going to take that same, they're going to use the cost estimates and service lives to generate a projected total cost by year. And you're going to start again with what is the current assessment and the current fund in the balance of, current balance in the fund of reserves. And then you're going to create what that threshold is. And that may be that the board says, we never want to dip below 20%, or we never want to dip below $1 million, or we never want to dip below 25,000. So whatever they set that threshold, that's kind of what it is. So that baseline is, you know, we never want to go below 0, and threshold is we never want to go below a figure that the board has set up. Sometimes there's a hybrid in a report, which provides the annual contributions necessary to maintain the balances in more consistent with the fully funded goal by increasing the annual contribution to a specified amount the following year, and then it escalates kind of every year, matching inflation. And so that allows for a gradual increase over time after the initial increase, and addresses the equity issues. So a lot of times that hybrid will be done if you've gotten a reserve study and found that you are severely underfunded. This kind of hybrid plan allows you to fund over a shorter period of time without going and saying, well, we have to increase assessments by 35–40% this year. It allows that gradual increase. So now that we've kind of seen what all of those methods are as far as funding, what does fully funded mean? Because we all hear, well, are you fully funded? Or there's a reserve study bill in either the state or the county, and they talk about fully funded. So when they talk about fully funded, we're going to go back through those same methods. So the component method, that just means that the assessment equals the sum of all of the component assessments. If it does, then you're fully funded. On the accrued value, the reserve fund has the cumulative value of all the accrued values for each component. And that's the very difficult standard to meet that most associations would never, ever be able to meet, regardless of how much money they have in their reserve fund. Under the baseline funding, the reserve balance at the end of the year never goes to zero during the study period. So, you know, if you are fully funded, then you are putting money away for that, and you're never going below zero. So that is considered fully funded under the baseline. And then under the threshold, it's making sure that the reserve balance, again, at the end of the year, never goes below that chosen threshold value of the study period. And so that's, you know, with those different components, that's what's made there. You will see in that reserve report that you get that they have different tables. They'll show you what the funding is if you use the component method versus the baseline or threshold. But it's something that the board will look at every year with management, and then as they renew the reserve study, then they can make those changes on a year-to-year basis, as long as that they are funding the reserves at the proper value, so there's not a surprise that comes forward when you need to replace a component.
Stacy, thanks very much. Thanks for talking to us about the funding. I don't think we can talk about that. There's not enough, we can't say enough about it. It's one of the more complicated parts of understanding reserves and really the lifeline of how we get from point A to point B in sustaining our communities and their reserves. Want out to again thank Stacy, and want to introduce you Commissioner Walker, Commissioner Cheryl Walker. Lots of great background. Cheryl served on 2 years on the Prince George's County Commission of Common Ownership, and she recently joined the Montgomery County Commission on Common Ownership. So we're very glad to have her as a commissioner with us. Ms. Walker is an acknowledged authority with multifamily and residential housing operations and management, has over 20 years of hands-on experience, where she found at an early age that she really had a knack for blending professional and commitment and being a very informed proponent of sustainable community-based living. As with some of our other distinguished commissioners, Ms. Walker has her PCAM designation, which I want to add from Community Associations Institute is the highest designation a community association manager can have. She also has her AMS, her CMCA, and the prestigious CPM, Certified Property Manager. In her portfolio, she manages over 5,000 assets in Maryland, managing HOAs, condominium regimes, and also developing communities. And her passion is really training and mentoring new managers and educating homeowners and providing a voice to legislative bodies on behalf of the common ownership members. So I want to introduce again Ms. Walker, and she will be speaking with us about this evening paying for paying for implementing a reserve plan. I apologize, looking at the wrong line. Implementing a reserve plan. So Cheryl, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Perper, and everyone who took the time to be with us today. So now that we have covered what a reserve study is, its benefits, the need for it, the 3 different reserve study options, who should do the study, what information is needed, and how to properly fund reserve components. We are now ready to put the reserve study in effect. Upon receiving the draft reserve study, management, the board, and the analysts should complete a comprehensive review together in an open board meeting. The meeting will allow the membership to have an understanding of the purpose of the reserve study and what is being implemented through their reserve contribution. The meeting should also assure any requirements for governing from the governing documents, county, state, any community goals or and objectives are included within that study. Upon approval of the reserve study, the board and management should work closely in ensuring the budget reflects the general ledger code for the study and be funded each year with the intention of updating the reserve study every 5 years. The budget should also include a general ledger code for yearly reserve contributions and reserve expenses. So quick recap. For the reserve, there actually should be 3 codes. So you have a code for your budgeting for your engineer in preparation of the study every 5 years. So that can show up on a budget as an engineer study. It can show up on a budget as a reserve study. Then the next one is going to be the contribution. Everyone in the community should be able to follow that line, and that would be the contribution that Commissioner Gilfeld discussed previously. So those should be a separate GL lines with contributions from each person is put in there. And then finally, there will be expenses of this money. That should be a separate general ledger code as well. Where that money, who's using that money, what was the money used for? So those 3 line items should show up on everyone's budget. I'll say this, that implementing a reserve study on a community may only happen once, but it will be maintained every year. So a recap for this: management review. Management and board review are one and the same. It should be together so that everybody is always on the same page. The reserve study can be overwhelming, but if you follow the process of the management, board, and analysis working together in an open board meeting, it tends to be easier to understand each item and what the responsibilities are for the community from the reserve study. Make adjustments with the reserve analysis to meet community objectives and preferences. So together, all of that information that we receive from the governing documents, even the auditor sometimes has a say in that. All that information should be brought forward so that the reserve study is full and rich of all the information it needs. Draft report to present to the community. So we want to make sure that that meeting is held, that initial review is held in an open board meeting so that everyone is understanding. It should be the draft. And then again, once it is approved, we start implementing those things as I outlined earlier. Incorporate community feedback into the final report. That would be consistent with meeting the objectives and the preferences of not just the board, but the whole community, and being reminded that all of the entities that affect the community may have some pieces to be inserted into that. Again, I will go back to state, county, audit if there is information there that needs to be incorporated inside of your reserve study. Now, I'm pretty quick. Finally, the implementation should be complete. We've hit the keynotes here, but there may not be enough funds to support the study's suggestions. And at that, I'll turn it over to the next commissioner.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate that. And again, welcome aboard. Our next presenter is going to be Linda Moore. Dr. Moore is Vice Chair of the Education Committee for the Commission. She is also a clinical psychologist who has a private practice in Bethesda, Maryland. She's served on several professional boards as either president, vice president, or treasurer. She's been on various HOA committees. She currently resides in an HOA community with her husband and has owned property in a COC since, I believe, about 1986. She was recently appointed to the CCOC in July of 2020. And as I said, she serves as co-vice chair of the Education and Outreach Committee, and she is also on our newly formed Executive Committee. Dr. Moore.
Mark, thank you very much. And thank you, everybody that's been presenting, all the commissioners that have already spoken and laid out the sort of ideal situation so well. We've learned what reserves are, what a reserve study is. We've learned why they're necessary. We've learned how to go about getting it, what goes into it, how to implement it. This is the perfect world. Unfortunately, many of our communities are older communities, 20 years or older, and their amenities, their common property, their common elements are beginning to show wear and tear or deteriorating. They need replacement, they need repair, and they find out that they do not have enough money in their reserves. They haven't been appropriately budgeted, or there've been other problems that have arisen that ended up in a situation where there are not adequate reserve funds, or if they were to actually take the money from the reserve funds to address a problem with one of the common elements, it would totally empty out all of their funds, and they would have nothing available if there was any kind of emergency. So this segment will be looking at, well, what do we do then? What do we do if we are in a situation where the capital, we need to make capital repairs, we have a capital repair or replacement project, and we don't have the funds for it? And I'm going to go over several methods and also some important things to consider. So first, we're going to look at loans. There are several types of loans that are available to associations. One type is very similar to a credit card. It's like called a line of credit. They usually go for about 3 years, and the association can take out money from this line of credit without paying the principal back initially, and they only have to pay interest on it. All right, and that can allow them to start taking care of problems right away. Another type of loan is called a term loan, where you might start with that with a loan that maybe goes for 15 years, and it might have either a fixed or a variable rate of interest on it. And it can take out the lump sum for what is needed to address this capital project that needs to be done. Or sometimes, a community might use a combination and take out a line of credit initially, and then convert the remainder. Like lines of credit typically will go for 3 years, and at the end, at the point of maturity, the full amount needs to be paid back, right? And that can be converted into a term loan that then lasts for maybe 15 years, and the payments will get spread out then, and it's not a huge burden to homeowners in the community. And one advantage of this is that it does allow the community to address the need right then. They can get competitive bids, and they don't have to sort of extend the time in which they have the project completed. So another option would be a special assessment. Now, special assessments are just single one-time assessments that are above and beyond your typical annual assessment or monthly or quarterly that you're paying to your association. These tend to be rather unpopular for rather obvious reasons. People aren't expecting them. They're not. They tend to be large, and they're not planning on those type of expenses coming up. it can be an advantage where then the community is not taking on any additional debt. But, and it also might be helpful for a community that has some difficulty in their financial status and, perhaps couldn't take on additional debt. But on the whole, they tend to be the least popular way of funding unfunded or underfunded reserves. Another option would be to, for if the capital project, if the, a capital repair or replacement project is something that doesn't need to be done immediately, but this, big ticket item is coming up, you can gradually raise assessments over several years and then accumulate the funds for it. So this is something that can, help get the funds available for this big crunch without having an immediate big hit. And then lastly, I was just going to say that there can be a combination of these approaches. So, for instance, if the community has reserve funds, but they are don't have enough, if the reserve funds would be, totally emptied out and the community would have no cushion if there was a, big emergency that came up, they could take part of the amount that was needed for this capital replacement and repair project out of the reserve funds and, take part of it in a loan. There are, numerous combinations that are possible, and homeowners can, the boards can discuss this with the homeowners and decide what is best for their community. So, not all is lost if you find out you're in a situation where you have some major big ticket items coming up, but you do not have the reserve funds to cover those items. So we also want to look at how to avoid this situation. In addition to what's already been discussed, it's really important that when boards are planning annual budgets, that they should always ensure that the assessments that they are determining to be assigned for that year covers both increasing operating costs as well as addressing the need for to fully fund the existing reserve study or the requirements for the existing reserve study. Typically, this will mean that annual reserves will need to increase at least 1% to 3% each year to prevent non-funding of reserves. So, why does this situation happen? Well, operating costs tend to increase. We all know that. And when they go up, if they have not been accounted for in increases in yearly assessments, then the money needed to meet operating costs end up getting taken out of the reserve contribution, which creates a really serious, or can create a pretty serious situation. What we find is that over a 3 to 5 year period where there's been no increase, like 0% increase in assessments, that this can result in a situation where you have a need for a 20% or even higher increase in assessments in the 4th to 6th year. This is something that's pretty undesirable, and it certainly tends to be unfair to new property owners in the community where they are getting, kind of hit with the sins of the past. And I think for right now, that kind of covers that topic. And I would like to turn the program back over to Don to move on to the next section.
Thanks, Dr. Moore, very much appreciate the information you provided to us. Moving on, it gives me pleasure to introduce Mark Fine. A little bit about Mark. In addition to being the chair of the CCOC, he has been a member of the CCOC since chair since 2015. He's currently serving his 3rd term as the chair of the commission and his 6th and final year on the commission. Well, we never say never. We never say never, but I know that I see, Mark's giving me a written eagle eye here, like, yeah, it means never. Moving forward, Commissioner Fine served for 6 years as the chairman of the Charles County Homeowners Association Dispute Review Board. He's also the president of the Fairlands Estate Association, which is his principal residence in Montgomery County. And he also serves as the president of the Maryland Homeowners Association and serves on several HOA boards in Montgomery County. In his other life, his professional life, Commissioner Fine is an adjunct faculty member at several local colleges teaching hospitality management classes, and is also the co-owner of Joshua Systems, the largest hospitality training company in Maryland. He holds a degree in business administration from American University and a graduate degree in finance from the University of Wisconsin Graduate School of Banking. I'm going to turn it over to Mark, who can talk to us a little bit about giving us talking about a brief description of COVID meeting rules and an overview and how to obtain info from our website. Mark, it's all yours.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate that. First off, if anybody needs to find any information about the CCOC, the easiest way is go to the browser, www.montgomerycountymd.gov/CCOC. If you need to email us, it's ccoc@montgomerycountymd.gov. And the phone number, as always, 311 in Montgomery County or outside of Montgomery, 240-777-0311. We have about a 98% return call rate within 4 hours. So we're trying to keep that going. Now, there are a lot of questions that have been asked about the bills going on. We're going to dive into them in a minute. First thing, a lot of folks are going, where do I get this information about the webinar? I'm going to break out of this and bear with me. You're going to go up to the internet browser, type in CCOC. Very simple. By the way, this year is the 30th anniversary of the commission. We are 30 years old January. We started January of 1991. We are the oldest and the largest body in the United States. So you type in CCOC. We are the first thing up on the Google browser. Click that. You're right into our website. Now, you want to know what's going on with meetings. Right here in the peach bar. Click that. That will bring up the latest announcements on what's happening regarding meetings. Basically, everything is going hybrid right now, which most people know. We will assist if you have issues getting through Zoom, GoToMeeting, WebEx, what have you, contact our office. But if you cannot demonstrate certain things regarding how to do an election, we highly recommend. Most documents say that you can keep your board of directors in place until the next election. Keep them in place. Stay status quo. Then you have your normal monthly meetings. You don't need to do the election. If you have to do an appointment, you call a special board meeting to do an appointment for somebody that leaves. Then when it's safe to do an in-person meeting, you have your annual meeting the way you normally would. And again, everything, if you click here, you will see all of our announcements and more on COVID in here too. Now, if you're wanting to know anything else about COVID and Department of Housing and Community Affairs or Montgomery County, you can click it right in here. As far as our website, first thing, training and webinar. You want to know how to get to tonight's webinar when we post it. Go to training and webinar, click more information, scroll down. Right here are all the webinars we have done so far. You will see the webinar for tonight listed right there. So it'll be there. You can pull it up. It will be in an MP4 status, and you can download it to your personal if you want to. Now, in addition to that, if you go to community information, click more information. Additional videos are here. We will also have the guide right here for the presentation for tonight. It's about 50 pages long. It'll be listed right in there. While I'm thinking about it, anybody that has questions about HO6 or homeowner insurance, there's a nice guide right here from the state of Maryland on it. We also have a very nice guide from the state of Maryland on condo insurance, and then our guide on HO6 is right there. If you have a question about anything regarding law, click the law library, click any of these links, you'll go straight to LexisNexis and Legal, what have you. We have the first search engine that we know of other than LexisNexis or the lawyer versions. We have affectionately called Jamarcus. You can search any legal opinion, legal decision that the commission has done going in here. You simply click searchable index. A little slow because I've got 10,000 windows opened at the moment. You hit the I agree. You go into it, type in whatever variables you have, smoking, election, whatever, and the system will come back with all the decisions and orders that we have issued on that particular subject. You can print them up if that's something you need to look at. The latest guide to the procedures and decisions and orders of the CCOC is right here. It is just been updated not too long ago. It is PDF editable or PDF downloadable if that's something you want to do. This is the August of 2020 version. Everything you need to know and all the casework. If your association needs help with what do I do? Right here, our association manual resource guide. Click it, tells you everything. We also have anything about architectural, anything about board duties, anything about closed meetings. By the way, you can only have an open meeting or a closed meeting. There is no such thing as a work session. And last couple things, I'll be done with this. You want to find out how to get a hold of associations, or you are the board and you're trying to find out if your information is correct. Click registration. Put in your association's name or the license number. It will tell you who we have as your board. If that is not your board, you need to update. You can also check to see if the board members have taken the class. Go over to training and webinar, type in the name of the association. We'll tell you if they've taken it. You want to know what happened at the last commission meeting or a commission meeting. Click on the commission, come down to our minutes. We have them posted all the way down to 2013. If you need them further back, let us know. We have them in archive. And then you want to know our schedule. Click there. That tells you what we have going in hearings, mediations, webinars, what have you, as well as our normal meetings. We are going to be doing this type of a meeting at least once, if not twice a month. And with that, I'm getting ready to throw a poll out here while we're getting ready to go into Q&A. What I would like, if you would, it's a very simple thing. 2 questions. Has your association conducted a reserve study in the last year? I'm sorry, last 5 years. Do you know if your reserves are adequate to fund the needs of the last study? Once you do that, we will get the list. Once you answer it, I will tell you what your responses are. Looking pretty good here. Uh-oh, starting to go down. Okay, I'm going to cut off the polling. And I am going to share the results. Are y'all seeing that up on screen? That's not bad. Now, I am going to take the window down and stop the share screen. And we are going to open up the Q&A. And if you have, we're going to start through the questions first. And I'll let the panel, if you would like, most of them we have already answered in the chat. Stacy, I beat this one to death last night, so I'm going to give this one to you.
Okay.
They want to know about, and when I say they, it's probably in here about 15 times. And then I'm going to give you the next one because it's the electric vehicle one.
Okay.
They want to know the status of 313, our 0321 bill, and then also the state bill for statewide 567.
Sure. So the first bill is for, would be requirement for Montgomery County communities to have a reserve study done and to fund those reserves at 80%. And that is going for testimony on February 16th. I always forget what month we're in. And then there's a state bill as well. So Prince George's County had the bill approved last year, and that took effect October 1st. And the Montgomery County and the state bill kind of both mirror that as well. So that is kind of the status of where that is right now.
Okay, and who wants to field the question? And will Montgomery County be defining anything regarding electric vehicles and the rights neighbors will have for charging vehicles, especially at a townhome where parking is in front of the homes?
So there is a pending state bill, several of them actually, regarding electric car chargers and those that are in homeowners associations, those in condominium associations, who is responsible for paying for that infrastructure. So I would stay tuned for that. Right now, they're just.
I can help you if you want. 480, HB 480 and HB 110.
Yep.
Okay. Has Montgomery County earmarked any COVID relief funds for the homeowner associations and different housing co-ops located in the county? We did the first go around. We earmarked a little over $2 million to help the associations. And unfortunately, we did not get a lot of success with that. We don't know why. We are currently waiting to see what's going to happen with the new CARES funding with the new administration. And if we can get funding, it's absolutely number one on our list to try and help. So that is something that we want to do. So, stay tuned for that. But some things you might want to look at is go to www.montgomerycountymd.gov/DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. There are grants that are out there a lot for watershed, for solar, for ponds, for any number of things to help the associations do things they need to do. Look at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Talk to us at DHCA. We have community reinvestment things we can do that can help you. Granted, it might not be totally COVID related, but anything that you can get in a grant is going to help you where you don't have to make that expense out of your budget. So shoot us a note and we can put you in touch with who you need to talk to see what we can do. And it's first come, first serve. So whoever gets out there, you're going to get it.
And Mark, don't forget, there's also the Green Bank.
Yes. We have done several green banks symposiums. We did one for solar for condominiums, one for solar for associations. We're also working with a couple associations right now for infrastructure. Please look at the website where we have the webinars and you can get the information, or let us know, send us an email. We'll put you in touch with Green Bank. Some of them are backed by county funds. So I believe the loans are at maximum of $200,000 per loan and up to, I think, 4 loans at one time. But Tom Dio up there will be more than happy to work with you. They are eager to assist the associations. We're also planning a COVID seminar for next month, so stay tuned for that one. From Adrian, is it correct that infrastructure assessments with a useful life greater than 50 years are not typically included in a reserve study? If so, how does a community plan to replace an asset such as a pool at the end of its greater than 50-year useful life? Who wants it? Anybody? Cheryl? Stacy?
So Cheryl, if you, I was just gonna say, typically with a pool, I've not seen it last 50 years. Typically, you have to completely redo that surface and in the bottom part of that pool, Cheryl, 25 years about. So I've not seen anything go out as far as 50. So I
Most
definitely.
I've seen is like 30.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't seen any component where the useful life is beyond that
No.
25, 50, 30 years.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's time to find a new one. Okay, Osborne Jackson, does the county have any programs in assisting in providing funding for items that the reserve study recommends to replace? Signage or retaining walls? Yes, you want to get with community redevelopment through the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. We might be able to assist a little bit, or we can steer you in the right direction of a department. So again, send a note to CCOC and we'll put you in touch with Rogers or somebody. I mean, there are plenty of people out there that want to help. How do you fund your reserves when you're, this one I like. How do you fund your reserves when you're using all of your funds to handle the operating expenses? Cheryl's grinning, so I'm going to let her chime in. Go ahead, ma'am.
So how do you fund your reserves when you are using all of your funds to handle operating expenses? The first thing that comes to my mind is we need to rethink the assessments that are being charged. Because if there is deficit funding, because that is exactly what it is, if you do not have enough funds to cover your reserves, then we have to really rethink what the community needs to operate accordingly. So what I would suggest is that a review be done with the board, with management, to figure out where the community needs to be to get the funding needed to fund its operations and its reserve. Into that, I'm going to add a little twist. I was thinking about another commissioner and what they were saying. Believe it or not, as Stacy had said earlier, you can never use your reserves to fund operating. Operating is the one fund you can go to if you run into a jam and be able to fund a reserve item. So you always want to make sure that the community is funded properly. And again, I will conclude my thought with saying, if that is the issue, it is really time to look at the assessment amount that is being paid into the community at this time.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm going to put Don on the spot because I think he sees what's coming. What resources does the CCOC provide to HOA boards to use in evaluating the competency of HOA management companies, including competency in financial management services?
Very nice having everyone. No, I'm kidding. Actually, no, that's a great question. I think that for the most part, there are general guidelines that are out there through Community Associations Institute. Talks about how you can go about, finding competent management and what does that look like. I think for the most part, I would say that the CCOC can provide some kinds of general comments, but I think that it's really I think because the commission is made up of multiple disciplines here, we really we shy away from giving really advice on looking for professional resources. There are other places like CAI that you can go to, to look for those resources. And CAI has plenty of guidelines for looking for an attorney, for community association management, for an auditor. That's really the best place. That's really the best place to look. So that's really not what we're geared for to do. That's kind of not in our charter to do that. We may have opinions, but again, we're all made up of different professions here on the CCOC. So it's best that we remain neutral in giving that kind of advice out to communities.
And there are a couple ways you can go too. You can also go over to, man, I just went blank. OCP, Office of Consumer Protection.
Yeah, you do that.
See what complaints you have on places. Better Business Bureau. Talk to other places. Don't ask the company for the references. Go out to HOAs and condominiums. Who are they using? And you're going to find somebody that's using that company you're looking at and see what they say. Do the work on your own. Don't rely on the company to tell you who they think you should call.
Right.
And Mark, I would say that it's kind of the due diligence of not just getting proposals in and saying, okay, the contractor A, for any contractor A, contractor B, contractor C, let's go with the lowest one. You have to look beyond the price and see what services are offered, what their clients say, and if it, to your point, if there's any complaints filed. So just doing that due diligence.
Oh, yeah.
If I could add just one thing to this, Mark, as we were going through the presentation and the bios were being read, one of the things that I will say is understanding what these acronyms mean, what it took to get those things behind your name is going to be key too. In anything that you do, when you think about an auditor, you need an expert in that field. When you decide that you need an attorney, you need an expert in that field. When you're thinking about management, and who's going to manage your community, you want to really look for someone who's taken the time to get the education to help you as volunteers to understand what you're doing. So I would also add that the education is very important too.
Absolutely.
Mark, if I could just tag on. Also, using the professional partners that you have, if you have an attorney and an auditor, that could be a good resource in asking them as well. Who might they recommend? What direction would they like to point you in, perhaps, for if you're looking for management? So that's always a good opportunity. Your attorneys, your auditors, those are resources in the business, and they have great eyes and ears. They know what's going on too.
Okay. Now, I'm going to we're going to need to probably keep our answers to a couple of minutes. I'm up to 47 questions at the moment. If we do not get to your answer, we absolutely will email the answers. We will post all of the questions on the website and put the answers that we give on the website also. This one, is it reasonable that a board of director raises condo fees by a significant amount and starts funding reserves for a brand new building handed over to the residents in May of 2020 when they admit they don't have a handle on the budget?
So I think just the quick answer to that is it is unfortunately quite typical when a community transitions from developer to owner controlled that the fees increase. And sometimes that is because the developer wants to keep the assessments at a lower level in order to sell the units in that condo or that HOA. So there's lots of different things, and we can get into a big, huge rabbit hole with it. But I would say it's not unusual. It is typical that the fees increase greatly over when it was developer controlled.
Absolutely. And when you're transitioning from the developer to the board, absolutely consult the state document. It says what they are supposed to turn over. And make sure you get it. There, I think, 27 documents, I'm not mistaken. And a lot of times people Yeah, I got it right there. And a lot of times people do not do that. And out of sight, out of mind, and at that point you're in trouble because when you sign off, you're done. So make sure you get what you're supposed to get and check with people before you do it. And if you don't know, ask for help. Okay, our management company hires the firm that does a reserve study. No, the board hired the firm. We have found out that our board should be interfacing with the reserve study company before it performed. So we all agree on how it is to be conducted and how the financial estimates are arrived at.
I don't think that, I think that was more of a statement, but Mark, I think that
Yeah.
for this statement, I would just like to clarify, management never makes decisions. We never make decisions. We bring things to the board, but the board is the only one who can make decisions on hiring contractors, on the reserve study, on the budget, anything regarding the association. Management is there as an advisor, as a professional advisor, just like your attorney or your accountant, but it is always a board decision and action, and absolutely 100% the board should be involved in that reserve study planning, reviewing the reserve study before the board approves that reserve study.
Right. I too represent a small community, 166 homes. We're self-managed. We do have common area, but no capital except a pass system that runs through the community. Is it necessary to get a reserve analyst to complete the study, or can we do this ourselves? If you have, I would think you have an entrance monument. I would guess if you're 166 homes, do you have tot lots? Do you have a playground? Do you have a stormwater management pond? Those are the things that are also going to be on that study. And it all depends on, what you have as your capital asset there, because a lot of people think it's brick and mortar. It's not. And we'll be more than happy to discuss that with you offline so we can determine, but it's hard to make an assessment, not knowing what you have. But generally, you've got something. Even if it's common area, there's going to be something there.
Mark, if I could just add to what you said and the question that we have here. Let's say they don't have a monument sign, they don't have a tot lot, but all they have is this path system that runs through the community. If it's concrete or asphalt, you probably need to get someone out there with some experience with concrete and asphalt to tell you what the life of that is.
Yeah, how long, when do
asphalt
you
and
recode
concrete
it?
requires so much more than what you see with the naked eye. So I would say if, yeah, to some extent, some expert needs to come out there and be able to help them appreciate when that one thing needs to be addressed, if it is, more than just regular dirt.
Right, because they've got to top coat it. They might have to replace
Right.
it at a certain point, what have you.
And I think the one thing to point out, and then we can move on to other questions, is that when it comes time to sell, the lender is going to ask for the most recent reserve study.
Mhm.
And the reason they do that is because they want to make sure that when they look at the financials for that association and they look at the reserve study, is there a special assessment coming or not? And so, even though it's not right now required to have a reserve study as far as the Maryland Condo Act or the HOA Act, lenders always have asked for this. They always will ask for it. And so that is going to affect your sales in the unit if you
Right,
don't
and if
have
you
it.
don't disclose, there could be a problem. And I've got
And
one coming up for.
If I could just add one last thing.
Yeah.
The reserve study is more than just a pamphlet. It's all of the documentation, the maps, the reports for, how the elevators are maintained. All of those service reports represent a portion of the documentation that any good management company is going to need as they begin to do their updates. So treat them all as important documents for your ongoing proof of your reserve.
Absolutely. Shalaya, we have to stop meeting like this. This is about the third time this week. Anyhow, she was on my Zoom last night when I was telling you, the commissioners. Anyway, the question is, do you have to do a complete reserve study every 5 years, or can you tweak it to the current study? You can do a level 2
Yep.
at your 5 year. Not a problem. Absolutely. They don't have to physically come out. It all depends on what's going on.
Well, the level 2, they
Oh,
still.
level 2, they're
count.
coming out, but I'm saying
Right.
you don't have to do a full
They don't take
blown.
measurements.
It's
Right.
just updating new things.
Yep. You only have to do the level 1 if you've never had a study before.
Right. David Churchill, how do we make sure the study will accurately predict and account for the rate of inflation?
By updating it every 3 to 5 years, because the rate of inflation and the cost of materials are going to change all the time. For instance, this pandemic has created a huge increase in the cost of materials and the availability of materials. So any reserve study that was done 5, 10, 15 years ago that you're still relying on, it doesn't matter now because the cost has skyrocketed. Hopefully they'll come back down again, but that's the whole point of having that study updated every 3 to 5 years.
Absolutely. Rachel came in late. She was asking, will we be receiving a copy of the presentation? Absolutely. Again, it'll be on our website, the MP4 version, the talk and audio that you're attending right now. The whole thing will be there. In addition, we will post the Q&A, questions and answers, the written version of it. You'll hear what we're saying now. And then also we will have the PDF version of the full presentation, which you didn't see all the PowerPoint slides to. That will be on the website for you to download. Helen Davies, every reserve study I have seen has overestimated the actual needs to be funded. Part of this is to sell more reserve studies. How does pending legislation take this into account if it requires the associations to fund 80% of the reserve needs? There are about 3 or 4 companies out there locally that do the study. If you are concerned about the company that did the study and they're the same company that's been doing the study, you might want to possibly look at another company and see what that one tells you. I've seen some where it's a little overestimated, but I have seen some that are pretty good. It all depends on what they're talking about, and if you excuse the expression, garbage in, garbage out. You need to be 100% accurate in your pre-meeting to let them know what it is, when you got it, how much it cost, all of that. And if you don't have the info, they're doing the swag method. I knows that one. And you've got to be prepared. If you're going to have an analyst come out to do a reserve study, you do not pick up the phone Monday and have them out on Thursday. You need to have several weeks lead time to get your information together. And then you should have all that historical. If they have that, they're going to give you a pretty good estimate at what you need. If not, then I would shop for another. And that's just my opinion. If anybody else wants to add to it, feel free. Small community of 30 homes. What would the typical price range for the reserve study? Again, it all depends on what you have as your capital assets. They can run anywhere 500 for minimal, 1,500. It all depends on what you have. We'll be happy to talk offline. We don't know. We need to know what you got, and we can give you an idea where they are. And we can give you the name of some people. They're, like I said, there are 4 to 5 of them local here. call them. What entities are extending the loans you suggest to HOAs and assets or HOA assets used as collateral? Most of them that are doing them right now, you've got Pacific Premier, you've got,
A lot of the banks are.
yeah.
A lot of the banks are, and yeah, they do use, it's not the HOA assets, they actually use the assessments.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Most of them are doing your assessments that are coming in as a collateral.
Right. Yep. So they want to see it in your budget that you're planning to have that loan paid back over that 5 or 10 year period of that loan.
Right. Here's one we're going to love. In the event that a homeowner sells and leaves behind an outstanding HOA dues balance, when is it appropriate to write off that balance? My first question is, where was the attorney and why wasn't there a lien? But I'll leave that one alone. Stacy, you're smiling, so I'm going to you.
I think the quick, because we've got a lot of questions here, I think the quick of that is that the auditor every year will provide the board with a list of recommended write-offs. And just remember that if you write it off, that does not mean that you cannot collect it in the future. If you see that homeowner on TV winning the lottery, you can still go after that bad debt. So whenever you write off that bad debt is something that the board makes that decision on based on recommendations from the auditor and management typically.
Right. If we're a sub-association and have no overhead, I think we don't need a reserve study. Am I correct? If you're a sub-association, I might guess that you are possibly a condo. Most of the time you are. If you're a condo, the condo has to replace the walls outside, the roof, the outside concrete, sidewalks, what have you. You're going to need to do a reserve study. It all depends on what it is. If you're a HOA townhouse, you probably have some tot lots. You might have some parking lots. It all depends on the entity. We would need to know a little bit more specifically about your place so we could give you an idea. But I have very rarely seen a sub-association that does not have assets. For loan options, how do they work in terms of collateral? Again, it's mainly on your assessments. Dr. Moore, thank you for saying that 1 to 3% yearly increases are needed, not to have to put into more onerous increases later. My community has been trying to recover from that exact scenario. I'm going to help you with this one, Linda. I want to cringe every time somebody tells me we're not going to raise the assessment. You need to do something every year, if only to cover the increase of those expenses that you know are coming. Otherwise, you're going to be in double Dutch. What happens after reserve study is complete? The community relies on it and finds out major components underestimated in a year projected for replacement is significantly off the mark. Therefore, reserves are totally inadequate. Sounds like we might be doing a special assessment.
But it goes back to, that's the reason why reserve studies need to be updated. And you cannot rely on a reserve study from 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Right. And we have been looking at documents in the CCOC for a while now. Very rarely do we see a reserve study that is within the last 7 years. Most of them are, 8 to 11 years old. Please try and update these things. Most reserve studies are based on cursory evaluation of the exterior of the condominium. They don't go on the roofs. They don't go into the crawl spaces. They don't look at plumbing, etc. Then you need to find somebody else to do it. A good specialist is going to do it. Does the entire community need to vote on how to fund a capital project? Is there not enough money in the reserve funds, or can the board alone vote on it? That's going to depend on your governing documents. You need to look at your governing documents and see what they say as far as assessment, how much you can go up without homeowner vote, as well as your special assessment. And if you're out there looking, I would say, please read your governing documents before you sign the bottom line.
Mr. Chair, I would ask you to speak to that in terms of the new state bill, because it speaks directly to what is getting ready to happen. And maybe we need to just kind of touch on that. Because I believe the state bill says if it's passed, the board will fund to meet the 80%.
Yeah.
Right, so when your documents don't allow the board to raise assessments, and it gives that limit of 10 or 15%, that's the portion of the bill that is going to allow the board to override that in the document,
Correct.
so that they can
Right,
properly
to fund the
reserve.
reserve.
Right.
Right, they can't do it for operational, and if they get caught playing the game, there's gonna be problems. It's strictly to fund the reserves. Thank you. Are there any grants to assist condominium communities in distress?
I think we covered that.
Yeah, we did. And we're working on it. How can a board function with members on the board and the architectural committee? How can a board function with members on both the board and the architectural committee? What happens when a hearing happens, when the board has to hear an architectural violation? What is your recommendation? Number one, you don't have them both. But if you have a member who's an architectural and is on the board, if they hear it at architectural, when they get to the board, they recuse. You do not want to be voting twice. And, we can talk, I won't mention who this is. She knows me. We can talk offline. That is an absolute no-no. Architectural also needs to bring the report of that committee to the full board meeting.
And
Every
if there's not
committee,
right, and if there's not a committee,
it
and the
falls back
committee
to the
is the
board.
board, then it's just the board. It has to be people who are not on the board to be a committee.
Right.
Otherwise, the board's
If you can't
functioning.
find an architectural, put it in your minutes that the board is the committee. Then you don't have to worry about it, but we can talk about that. Does the bill actually state 80%? As I read the bills, there's no mention of the percent. It's providing, it now says providing funds. That's correct. We took the 80% threshold out. Oh, sorry. Somebody was sending me a message on the other one.
Don, do you want to take the next?
Yeah,
question?
do me a favor, Don, take over for a second. The other one's asking me something. We're at, or Stacy, go ahead.
Stacy, yeah.
Yep, Leslie.
Yeah, Leslie.
Unrelated to reserves, but we have a unit owner who owes thousands of dollars worth of condo fees. Person wants new windows. Can we withhold permission until some effort is made? A few months worth of payments. They apparently have just replaced their floors, so money must not be an issue as they've had consistent tenant for years.
Okay, that one, if you've got a homeowner that absolutely has a renter and the renter has the owner has the license, you can contact licensing. We can hold up the renewal of that license if they're not paying their assessment.
You can also get a judgment against the owner and then go and take the rent from there. But as far as withholding maintenance items, most documents, and it really depends on your documents, the windows can be the responsibility of the association to replace, but the owner can be billed back for that. So it just depends on your documents. But in any case, if an owner's delinquent in a condominium, you can't withhold services.
Right, and you definitely
Repairs.
do not want to do that if it's not allowed in the declaration. You could get in severe trouble if you start withholding certain amenity services and the declaration doesn't say you can do that. When did the law change about work sessions versus meetings? We did that February of 2020.
Well, no.
Our resolution was to clarify it.
To clarify it, work sessions have never been allowed.
Right.
It's just boards have, especially older boards, have always used that, but work sessions are have to be open. Anytime that the board is getting together and discussing association business, it is a meeting.
Bear with me 10 seconds. I'm going to take people there. If you go down to community information, are you seeing this?
Yes,
Okay, you go down there and we are going to how to hold a closed meeting. Scroll down. February 5th, 2020 resolution of the commission. There it is. It says that we only recognize when you have a quorum of the board or a quorum of a committee. It's either an open meeting or a closed meeting, period.
I believe the state supports that too with the. 11
Absolutely, they do.
So
Absolutely.
you can have a working session, but it has to be open to the community. So you might as well just have a board meeting because there's no private meeting.
Right. The whole thing was because people were using this as a crutch to get out of letting members in. You have to give notice of any meeting you're doing. And we were having issues with that.
Yep.
And again, it's anonymous. So whoever it is, if you'd like to talk to us more about it, shoot us an email and we'll talk. If you get COVID funding, what kind of expenses could be funded? It depends on what the money is going to be earmarked for. We've got several things we want to be talking to folks about. We haven't gotten it all together. This is solar allowed in the community. If it is an HOA, they can put it on their home. If it's a condominium, the condominium can put it on if that's what they want to do. But the HOA can't put solar on common area without getting approval of people. So you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, you go to the powers that be to make sure that you're doing what you need to do correctly before you do it. But they can't, if you're putting solar on your roof of your home and you're in an HOA, they can't say no. They can make you do a permit, the application, but they can't say no, it's only got to be here. There are certain stipulations, so get with us, we can help you with it. We talked about HB 313. Do we have to complete reserve study every 5 years?
Yeah,
you have to do it every 5 years, either a full study or an update. There will be one every 5 years.
Right, but once you have the full study, you just have to update it.
Right, it's one or the other.
Yep.
What happens if a new board member refuses to take the mandatory HOA board training? How long do they have after an election to complete it? January 1st of 2016, the law took effect. If you are elected, re-elected, appointed, or reappointed, you have 90 days from that date to take the class. If you do not take it and someone notifies the CCOC about it, we'll send you a polite letter advising you about it. If nothing is done, you'll then be required to take the class mandatory with a commissioner. You will not be able to take it online. If you do it online, we're going to make you do it again. With the new bill, you'll be thrown off the board. That is what the language that it says in the new law, if the new law goes into effect.
Mark?
Yeah.
I think it's important to also add that somebody needs to make the complaint to the association. The
Yes.
association just doesn't come in and monitor.
No, I'm not looking to see if Linda's on here. So if she is, Linda, please forgive me. Please do not shoot me. And Linda knows who I'm talking about, Linda. When 5015 came about, I made an agreement. I am not the police. I am not actively looking for board members that have not taken the class. But if a homeowner turns that person in, we have to deal with it. Anybody can tell if a person's taken a class. You go to our website, go to board training, click the link that says training verification, put the name of the association, look. If they're not there, you send us a letter or an email or something. We're now going to get involved. but I'm not going to look through 1,100 associations because I was asked not to. Now, if the person does not take the class, we've asked them to take it, they don't take it. It's a Class A violation. That is a $500 violation, which can be in certain extent per day. We have not done that. But with the new law, it also says that if they don't take it, they can be removed from the board. Currently, it says if they don't take it, the association has no seat at the table, possibly during a hearing of the commission. But I don't want to go there. If you're doing your job as a board member, you should be taking your class. We also have other classes to help the board. Do it. They're free. It's the only one in the nation.
So next
Yeah.
question.
Reserve study budgeted in the reserve funds. I'm sorry, is a reserve study budgeted in a reserve fund or from operating budget?
You can budget for it and pay for it out of reserves.
Right.
Yep.
Possible sources for getting loans we covered.
Mhm.
What is CAI? Community Associations Institute, Northern Virginia. You can Google them. They are a trade association that assists HOAs, condos, and cooperatives, and also works with community association managers. You didn't even flinch. I said it right. Absolutely. They are great working with. Reach out to them. With rates so low and only able to get less than 1% of long-term CDs, less than inflation, long-term funds, more than 10 years, can it make sense to invest money in high-risk assets or equities? No.
Nope, can't do it. Have to make
Do
sure
not
that
play the stock market.
you have to make sure that the principal that you put into the reserves is what you get out of them. You can't put them in something that you're going to potentially lose money on.
Absolutely.
FDIC approved.
And you want to make sure that people are doing what they're doing. We want to keep honest people honest. What was it? 2017 and 18, $5 million embezzled because the people were doing this kind of stuff. With COVID providing financial hardship for some families across the county, does the panel have any suggestions for collecting homeowners' dues from delinquent accounts? Any tips to help homeowners before their accounts go delinquent? Absolutely. Reach out to your homeowners before it gets bad. Have them sign a hardship agreement with you. We have that agreement on our website. It basically says they're having a problem. The board ratifies it, says we're going to help you. We're not going to come after you. You agree that when COVID is over, you will make payments. You have a deal. Nobody bothers you, and it is done in private. The world doesn't need to know what's going on, and you don't have to go through attorneys, because at that point you have an agreement. Now, they renege on the agreement, you get with your attorney. But in the meantime, we would suggest work with the homeowner. Make sure you're telling them, come to us before it gets to this point, and make a payment plan, and we'll be more than happy to assist.
And do it in writing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely, in writing.
And Mark, don't we have on our website the webinar you did with that talked about mortgage assistance and really went over all of this?
Right. We have a mortgage assistance seminar up. I think Stacy's seeing the same thing I'm seeing right now.
Yep.
There is a homeowner that's in here that's put I thought I said this, but I guess I might not have. I am not listing anyone's name on anything that's going on our website. I'm going to list the question and the answer. I will email you if you ask us about something, but no, we're not going to list your stuff there.
Mark, I'm going to just knock out the next three really quickly so that we can get on, because the questions are growing and growing. Is it necessary to have a management company to run a condo association, or could the board employ an accountant? First of all, it depends on your documents. Your documents either will say that you shall have a managing agent or you may, but please note that management does more than just finances. We are professionals who guide the board on everything, every aspect of the association, not just finances. But again, the first place is to look at your governing documents to see what it says. Question about infrastructure upgrades, putting in solar or switching lights to LED. Those are not considered reserve expenses. Those are going to be operational expenses. You can plan over several years to put money aside in a capital operating fund, which is completely separate from your operating expenses and your reserves. But if you don't currently have it, you can't spend reserves for it. Once you buy it or put it in, then you can add that to your reserve fund. And then just to clarify, there was a question about is it their understanding that no election should take place during COVID? That is not correct. Many associations have successfully had annual meetings remotely. There are some rules on that, and the CCOC can help you with those. But basically, if you want to hold them off, your documents allow the directors to stay in place, but you absolutely can hold an annual meeting in elections during COVID.
Absolutely. Now, the question about if the board makes horrible mistakes, who has the right to fire them? Absolutely look at your governing documents. It tells you how to hold a special meeting and what percent you need to remove a member and how to replace them.
Right.
Need
Owners
help,
have that.
let us know.
Yep.
And we can steer you in the right direction. My question about raising fees for a new building was incompletely answered. The board of directors doesn't. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time reading it.
Yeah, it doesn't have a handle on the budget. It would be better to wait for a year before making drastic changes in condo fees. Again, I don't think it's something that we can answer here. Because we don't know the circumstances of.
Just something right here, just one thing for everybody to know, that yes, we're here talking about reserve studies, but when you're coming with a developing community, a transition study is always good to have. And also note that when you're developing a community, when the first tot lot goes up, when the first component happens, the developer really should be having a reserves begin at that time so that we do not get to this point. The other thing that I would say is all funding is coming out of operations. All funding sources start with assessments. So when the assessments come in, it is then divided. So in context of this, where the money is coming in out of operating, it is time to start looking at the budget, looking at the funding, and making some separation with the guidance of a reserve study. So I did want to add those two things.
Okay.
Yep.
There's a question about how much do they cost for a community the size of Leisure World. Leisure World does basically 29 reserve studies because each mutual does their own.
Right. Yep. And I think, anywhere from 1,500 to 5,000, 8,000, just depending on what you
Right.
have.
Somebody is applauding the panelists. One of the best webinars they have attended since we've been doing it. Thank you very much. With a high delinquency rate in our community, what happens if we are unable to fund the reserves at 80%, if 321 passes? We're hoping we're going to have some things in place to help the associations with that.
And again, it's a clarification. It's not 80%. It's whatever the reserve study is recommending.
It's requiring for the funding.
Yep.
Community with 206 units, reserve studies severely underfunded. We've increased assessments by a small percentage every year to correct it, but still have big infrastructure, roofs in need of replacing. It tends to eat almost all reserves year after year. We're low income community, and increased assessments more than 3 to 5% really hurts your community members, often results in foreclosure and delinquency. Tried loans, we do not qualify. Best way to balance. Have you reached out to your property management, your community manager? See if you can sit down and get some help from them on structuring a budget. If not, talk to us. We can help with your property management. There are things we can do within the county to assist and assisting your community manager. There's no such thing as no hope.
That was very good advice, Mark, because I'll let you know that when I see that the issues tend to eat almost all of the reserves away, that's a challenge, because what it's saying is there are a lot of fixes coming out of reserves as opposed to real replacement repairs. So yeah, that's probably a great advice you just gave.
Thank you. Ted, the maximum increase depends on what's in your governing documents. You want to look at your governing documents for budget, for your assessment, and your reserves, and that will tell you exactly what they can and cannot do without a vote. Reserve study I was referring to in my prior
I
question
think
was
that's
less.
just a statement.
I'm sorry.
I think that's just a statement. Just
Oh, okay. Can you limit the number of rental units? My
Yes.
suggestion to you is talk to your attorney.
Yes.
That
But you
that
can't make
is
a
going to be,
bylaw amendment.
yeah, it would be a bylaw amendment, but you're going to get a sticky either way you go on that one. So work that one with your attorney. Reference the work session. We conduct 95% of our business via email. No. Do me a favor, call us so we can talk. We don't want to get you in trouble.
Yep. Email should
And
not.
that, or please, if you haven't, take the online director training, or we'll do a 101 with you. We want to help you. If you want to devote a portion of your board meeting for discussing individual delinquency isn't allowed the closed portion, absolutely, you can do it, but you've got to notify them that you're going to close it prior to closing.
Yep.
Where's the link to find the class? Go to the webinar and it's the top one. It says register for the director training class, or shoot me a note. We're also doing Zoom classes. We have one on Saturday, or two of them on Saturday. Thank you, very helpful. Yes, I know it's 8 o'clock and we are 8:27. I've got maybe 5 more and I'm going to cut it.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
Legal limitations, email exchanges again. The board should not be conducting board business and making decisions over email unless it's an absolute emergency that cannot wait for a notice called meeting.
That requires
I
an
can
unanimous
handle the
consent
bottom
in order
one.
to move.
Okay, the bottom one for anonymous.
Okay.
If you take the class online, you'll be in the online system. If you took the class but you don't see your name, you want to call the office, because we have a second list for the in-person and Zoom. We're in the process of merging those two lists into one so you can see it online. But unfortunately, IT got sidetracked with a couple other things, but we should have it up shortly. But we know if you took it, and we can validate that. That's why we said if somebody's lodging a complaint, they send an email. We're going to check the other list to make sure if they did be in person or Zoom.
So there was a question about, it says in the new bill, reference to board members not taking CCO training. That is not a new bill. That has been the bill since 2016, that you have to take that training. Any special permissions need to put a commercial electronic billboard on a condo building. That would be it within your documents, and then reaching out to Park and Planning in the county on that.
And we got another one. They're asking about the classes. We're going to go, we're going to try and set it back up on event again, or what's it, Eventbrite?
Yep.
We're going to try and do that again to do our Zooms on that so that people know. So keep a look on the website. Also, you can do it on the website online if you want to do that. Any questions, shoot us an email. We'll help you figure it out, but we can get you taken care of with no problem. We're on COVID, I think.
Let's see. Our association of 14 has started. Some of this, I think we can take offline. They're specifically asking about how they can find that. Who should pay for the required infrastructure cost of installing charging station in the garage? So right now there's some bills on that, but I do know for other associations, when they're doing that, they do have those owners who are putting in the charging stations split the cost of the infrastructure instead of the association bearing that full cost. And I think there was one other question that I saw, Mark, that I just want to address real quick.
Mhm.
before we end. And that was about things like Snowmageddon or the derecho, when you have these unexpected
Oh, yeah.
expenses. You should not be using reserve funds for that. If you absolutely 100% have to use reserve funds for that, then you have to make a plan to pay those back. And it has to be in the budget and has to be in the minutes. But the better way of doing it is within your operating budget is to set aside a 5 to 10% contingency line item. And that money is put away every year. And sometimes you'll use that money and sometimes you won't. And it gives you that nice little stockpile so that 5
Cushion.
years we haven't had snow and now we're getting snow. And so people, sometimes boards have reduced their snow budgets, or they've had their budgets the way it is. And then 1 year it's $120,000 to plow the snow. And by having that operating contingency fund there, that will help fund for those unexpected operational costs because of weather.
Okay,
Is
I'm
it
gonna-
also, isn't it also, I'm sorry, isn't it also important, Stacy, that if they do use money for operations, that it needs to be reflected on the balance sheet? There should be a
Yes.
due to, due from, so
Yep.
it's acknowledged, so it's
Right.
documented.
In the minutes
Absolutely.
and on the financials. Yep.
Okay, wrapping it up here to, again, remind everybody, the MP4 of this session will be on the site. It'll be under the training and webinar. We will be doing more of these. Please, if you are not on the paperless airplane, register under e-subscription for the CCOC, and we'll email you, letting you know in advance when we do them. We will have all the other things for this up by Monday. I will send out an email to all of the registered attendees with explicit instructions as to where on their websites all the things are, as well as the questions. If you are an individual that is looking for training, please reach out. We'll set up Zoom, whatever we have to do to take care of it. Law mandates within 90 days of election, re-election, appointment, reappointment. We didn't write it, but we have to enforce it. My panel, thank you very much for doing what you do. I appreciate it. Council member, thank you very much. Look for us again in the other districts. We're also going to be putting on a COVID fully through, and we still have 138 people on the webinar, being a half hour late. So I will let you folks, if you'd like to close this out, go right ahead.
Yay, we did so good.
Stacy, Linda, John, Don, anything?
Yep. Just want to thank everybody for attending. Thank you to all the panelists here. And stay tuned for more webinars as we continue through 2021 and celebrating our 30th anniversary.
All right, folks, we appreciate it. Y'all have a safe night. Please social distance, and thank you again. Have a great
Take care,
night.
all. Good night.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
let me do this.